Welcome to our podcast. I'm Lars. This is Klaus, and today we have Jacob Wolki from, is it Wolki?
That's it.
Jacob Wolki from Wolki Farms. Now, I first learned about you, I think it was your 24/7 butcher shop that went viral in my feed maybe a year ago or something. And
Yep.
ever since then, I've been following a lot of your innovative carnivore concepts. So I'm excited to chat with you today and learn more about what you're doing with carnivore and how you're impacting your community and so on and so forth. So thanks for coming on with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So Klaus, what were you asking him?
Yeah, I was just asking Jacob, how did you get started as a cattle farmer and a butcher?
Sure. Well, I don't have an agricultural background, but just through a bit of a private, like a personal health journey, I realized that it was processed foods that were keeping me down. And I've always been plagued with respiratory allergies, skin allergies, always been a bit fat, never had as much energy as that I'd like. And the doctors kept medicating me, and it was to the point where every spring I'd go and see my GP and she'd cash in 3 new scripts for me. I had eye drops, a tablet, and a nasal spray just to try and keep my respiratory allergies at bay. And one year I said to her, look, this is a nonsense. The allergies are still killing me. You need to do something. So she gave me some heavier meds, and the medication that I sprayed up my nose just made blood pour down my face, all the way down my shirt. And I just thought, this is an absolute nonsense. The medication's worse than the thing I'm trying to fix. And my very patient wife said, are you ready to address your diet? Because it was lots of...
She said that?
Yeah, basically.
How old were you at that point?
Oh, geez. 27, 28.
Okay. Any kids yet?
1.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we started getting into cleaner food, and I went down a bit of a rabbit hole about farming and just realizing how, the ultra processed foods we're eating are rubbish. And then even half of the unprocessed foods that we're eating are being raised in, very like drug dependent ways. And I was trying to find beef locally that hadn't been drenched, hadn't been wormed. And I couldn't find a farmer that sold direct to the public and had cattle that weren't wormed. So I thought I'm just gonna have to do it myself. So
what do you mean by wormed?
Well, cows, animals in conventional farming practices where they're set stocked and they're not rotated and everything, they'll build up a worm, so an intestinal worm burden. And, the reason that happens to animals that aren't moving is because when they're excreting manure, they're shedding out the eggs from the intestinal parasites, and then they're grazing around yesterday's manure and they're ingesting those parasites. And the parasites, so every animal, us too, we have a parasite burden that we can live with, but these animals get to the point that these parasites will tear off the body condition out of the animals and, eventually make the animals sick and kill them. So farmers use things like ivermectin is a really famous worming agent. That's what it's used for in livestock. So, and to me, that was just drug dependence, and I didn't want to be eating from an animal that was a drug addict. I just wanted a natural animal that had just been outside and allowed to be an animal. So I thought, I found some farmers.
You just came to this on your own.
Yeah, this is like I'm probably going through like a year's worth of thinking and exploring and learning and experimenting. And I heard some people online talk about how they raise their animals without these drugs. And I talked to the local farmers here, and they all say it can't be done or it's too much effort. So I thought I'd try it myself. And we've been farming for 4 years now and never used drugs on our animals. And everyone, we've got beautiful, healthy animals on our farm.
Yeah, you really do. I see all your posts. Having grown up on a dairy farm, I can tell what a happy cow looks like.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So
did you go carnivore at the same time as this?
No, we just sort of cut out all the processed foods and we're eating more whole foods. I actually started with organic vegetable gardening. That was in my backyard that was the first sort of thing I did when I was trying to get away from processed foods, because, you know, we just live in suburbia, my wife and I. So we just did what we could with what we had. And I got into no-till organic gardening. And then I guess, I don't know, it's probably about a year ago when the whole meat-based diet sort of really popped up on our radar. And I guess I probably saw Jordan Peterson doing it. And I thought, like, that's my dream, to have steak and eggs for breakfast and then steak for dinner. Like, that's all I want. And everyone's always criticized me for wanting to eat like that. So I did it for a while and, you know, stuck to it as best I could for when it was convenient and enjoyed it. And then my wife, just before we decided to have our third child, you know, with my wife's second pregnancy, she was anemic. She had iron issues. And when you're pregnant and you've already got iron issues and you're trying to up your iron levels, it's really hard. You know, it's like throwing buckets of water on a bushfire. You can't get in front of it. So my wife said I want to go carnivore.
She did.
Yeah, before we get pregnant.
Wow.
So we both were super strict carnivore it ended up being 4 months before she got pregnant. And then she started introducing a few more things into her diet, but still very heavily meat-based, animal-based. And she had an amazing pregnancy. She you know, her iron levels, because we got bloods done a few times, her iron levels are always great. She had none of the lethargic, tired, moody symptoms that normally come on with an iron deficiency during labor. So it was a real, and, you know, for women, when you sort of, I guess, do your research about gestations and this sort of thing, they get, the body gets progressively depleted. There was one book that we read, and it said if a woman, after a pregnancy, the quickest she can get her nutritional stores in her own body back up to full with a perfect diet is somewhere between 2 and 3 years. So, you know, we're having kids quicker than every 3 years. In our case, and our diet is probably not perfect. Like it wasn't before then, and, you know, we're pretty good now, but we're not perfect. And so women, you know, really, they're setting themselves up when they're just eating commodity crap and not doing much. They're setting themselves up for harder and harder pregnancy. So it was really exciting for me to watch Anne's second pregnancy, which made her, you know, tired and lethargic and all the things that went along with that, and then put a lot of effort in and a lot of discipline, and just have an amazing third pregnancy with an exceptionally healthy, radiant baby, born through a home birth in a swimming pool in our living room. Like, the whole thing was just completely beautiful. And I was stoked that it was nice for her, because it means I'm a closer shot to getting number 4 in.
Very good.
You're talking to 2 guys with 4 kids.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many do you plan on having?
I'd love half a dozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, sounds good. I think I'm done, but anyway.
Are you done, Klaus?
Yeah, I think so.
I always joke, my wife rolls her eyes when she hears me on these podcasts. You shouldn't say that. But when she says, "Rightio, Jake, this is the last one," I'm gonna pull out some magic and pop triplets in there.
Well, you know, it's
good sport.
Yeah, it's a good sport, and I see how you parent your kids on the farm and how you do it, and I think you're doing the perfect job. I think kids born onto farms, they get a whole decade of advantage handed to them just through practical experience. And I mean, there's nothing like it.
It's beautiful. You know, that's one of the conscious decisions about why we're doing what we're doing. We've just sold our house in suburbia here. We're in there for 2 more nights and then we're out. We're going to be homeless for about 6 weeks, and we're very close to settling on a farm just north of Albury, 150 acres, because all my farmland now is leased. I don't own any of it. So we're going to move out of town onto a bit of land and set the family up there. And I'm just so excited about getting my kids out of town and, you know, go outside and shoot something, burn something, chop something down.
And your butcher shop, it's right in Albury?
Yeah, it's in Albury's just like a small town here in Australia, about, you know, 50.
I've been there once.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, cool. That's right. You've been down this way. Yeah, so it's in Lavington. So it's just, centre of Albury.
Wow. And how many people live there?
So Albury is about 60,000. And then over the river, we've got a twin city. There's two cities on either bank of the Murray River. They're about 40,000. So our, this little metro area is about 100,000 people.
And how many people are you feeding out of that butcher shop?
Not enough. I need to feed more. Yeah, it fluctuates, but I was doing some math the other day. I got my calculator here, and I was working out if we call what's a portion, not for you guys, but for regular people, 150 grams of meat. Would that be a portion?
Yeah, something like that.
$33 tons.
I'm eating about
It'd be like we're probably doing somewhere between 200 and 250,000 portions this year.
Oh, okay, portions. That's how you is that how you measure it?
Well, I don't like not everybody buys all their meat off me, so it's hard to say exactly how many I'm feeding. But if so that's 200 and that's meals, 220. Let's call it 220,000 meals.
Oh yeah.
Big.
And you're totally vertically integrated in that. You're selling all the meat that you grow.
So yeah, we're selling all the meat that we grow plus a bit more. We've just partnered with a couple other local farmers. So earlier I said I couldn't find any farmers that were raising their meat the way I wanted it, that were selling direct to consumer. Now that I've been in the industry for 4 years and met a lot more people, I've met some sensational farmers that are doing an amazing job managing their animals without drugs and having chemical-free farms and doing everything right, but they're not selling direct to the consumer because they're not interested. They're selling their animals into commodity markets. So I've found a few of these guys and I've partnered with them, and I'm now buying their animals off them, putting them through our butchery to help with volume, because certain enterprises are extremely slow to scale. Like cattle's very slow to scale because they take so long to breed and grow. Whereas chickens, I can order chickens and have them in the freezer in 42 days from the time they arrive in the farm. But cattle, it's 2 years. So we're relying on some other local farmers to keep up with lamb and beef.
So why do the customers come to you?
There's two main reasons. The first is wanting clean food. And then the secondary reason would be people with animal welfare, concerns or a conscience around the way they're not wanting to eat animals out of a feedlot, or they're not wanting to eat eggs from chickens out of a shed or something like that. So, I get a lot of ex-vegans and ex-vegetarians coming and purchasing my product. A lot of them are actually on the first time they've eaten meat. I've got a slew of customers that have been on a plant-based diet for 15, 20 years. And the first time they've ever started eating meat is because they've come on a farm tour and they've met me and met my animals, and they've, feel like they can, with a clean conscience, get back into protein consumption.
Jacob, do you think, do you see is this a growing trend in your opinion? What you're doing?
Vegetarians getting onto meat?
No, well, both that, but also that more farmers getting into regen farming, just like you.
Yeah, look, they're both trending in regards to farmers getting into regen. Like, there's a lot of new farmers, like new people that want to farm. I feel like a lot of us are adopting, because it's we're not having to change old baggage. I gave a presentation a little while ago, and somebody said, "How come all the other farmers aren't transitioning this way?" And I said, "Well, apart from all the infrastructure to support old farming methods already being in place and working, you've also got to realize that if you're let's say you're an orchardist growing apples, and you're used to poisoning all the grass underneath the orchards to keep the debris down, but instead you want to transition and you want to graze it with chickens or sheep to keep the grass down, there's a lot of like generational baggage that you have to fight for. Grandpa who planted the trees might still be on the farm, and it's a big no-no to run chickens under fruit trees and damage all the surface roots. It's not as easy for farmers just to change their practices. There's a lot of different things going on between infrastructure, economics, family expectation. So I see a lot of new farmers adopting this. And there are a lot of great graziers out there. I think cropping is definitely the part of ag that's stuck the hardest in the commodity rat race.
Yeah.
Well,
What about I'll just get to the difficult question, which is probably easy. So is it carbon dioxide and methane neutral what you're doing? Are we destroying the environment with all the meat that we're eating?
Yeah, well, I've never measured, so everyone's going to come at me for being a heretic either way. But I refuse the assertion that cows are bad for the environment. I just think it's a ridiculous concept. We
absurd,
talk about our farm tours. It's like, what is the environment? Like, it's the landscapes with animals. Every landscape you look at that's devoid of animals is unhealthy. Like, it's a fracked oil field or something. You never go somewhere where there's no animals and go, like, you might turn up to the Arctic Circle and not see an animal, but you're not going to look around and go, this place is thriving. Like, it's not really where it's all happening, is it? In all the most fertile areas we've ever colonized or settled or farmed, or whatever phrases you want to use, have all had that fertility put there by ruminant herbivores in the first place. So, we need animals. Everyone wants to plant trees to produce oxygen, and no one realizes that trees drink oxygen overnight. Sure. It's not as simple as all the little taglines that we see on the news reports.
No, I totally agree, and I didn't. Obviously, my question was a rhetorical one, but it seems absurd to. Yeah, go ahead.
It's one we hear a lot in the carnivore community, and I think it's like these strategies come out of the matrix to attack meat eaters. I listened to a Anthony Chaffee podcast today. He really articulates it well, how that Seventh-day Adventist church kind of got their tentacles into the food pyramid early.
Yes.
And that now that we've all come through COVID, I think it gives us almost a mirror how we see large industries being corrupted. And then when that corruption goes on for a generation or two, I think we're the result of it. Like, I always come back to that stat. We are the lowest testosterone group of men in human history. And whenever I say that, I feel bad about it. It's like, I feel like saying sorry to my ancestors, because, we've just been attacked. Our food industry's been attacked for generations now. And I think
I hear things like that, and I try to game them, because you can think about that a lot and get down on yourself and get self-loathing as a civilization or whatever. But I try to game it and weaponize it, and I go, rightio, testosterone's trending down, which sucks. It's bad for a lot of reasons, but we've got tools to reverse that. There's things we know we can do: environment, diet, mindset, and so. It's all. I'm going to game it by making sure that my boys' testosterone doesn't slip, and look at how far ahead of the pack that's going to put them. I unapologetically want my children at an advantage. What's the opposite? A disadvantage? Would you like your child to be at I don't want my children to be at an advantage to subjugate people, but I'd like them to be at an advantage to represent and protect the family's interests. So you hear metrics like that, and I think the only way to shift the needle is to take some action and game it in your own life.
100%.
Absolutely.
So then, how many of your friends? Because were you born and raised in Albury?
Yes, sir.
So you must have a huge network of friends there. How many of your friends are carnivore?
Not very many, and I've got very close family that are vegans raising their infants as vegans.
Good Lord.
It's crazy. Just because you're involved in a world doesn't mean everyone around you. What do they say? You're never a prophet in your homeland.
Yes.
Every idea I come up with and everything I say at the dinner table, everyone's rolling their eyes. Here's Jake talking about how we don't need glyphosate again or whatever, like just hammered on, So, there's a good community, like in my personal friends group that I had prior to transitioning into farming, very, very few of them I would consider meat-based, but out of the friend and the community I've built around our farm business, a huge portion of my customer base is carnivore, and most of them not because they want to be, but because if they're not, they're violently ill.
Wow. Yeah, I always touch base on when I really started recruiting people I knew into it. So like after about 2.5 years I was in carnivore, everybody that knew me approached me and said, "You've changed. What's going on with you?" And through that process, I really learned that, guys who are, how old are you, Jacob, now?
32.
32. So you're younger. I find guys as they hit their late 30s, 40s, there's like an inflection point of low testosterone, environmental damage, maybe a divorce, and then they start saying, okay, I have to change my ways. I have to do something different. But for a lot of the younger guys, their testosterone is still so high, they're still so confident in their life's path that they allow themselves to take in all of the carbs and alcohol, so on and so forth. So definitely I've found in my own experience that people are most receptive to carnivore after they've had a few health problems.
Well, I've got more female carnivore customers than male by a long shot.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, yep. And that's what I mean. They don't want to. These women that I produce meat for, they want to go out to dinner parties and order whatever they want off the menu. They want to have a varied diet, but their health deteriorates so poorly with all sorts of like iron issues, reproductive issues, weight, hormone imbalance. Like, well, I've got customers that I had one lady that I can't remember the phrase of it, but she had like violent morning sickness with her pregnancy, and it was got diagnosed and it was this thing, and the only thing she could stomach that didn't make her throw up was my eye fillet raw. So she just had beef tartare for her whole pregnancy.
Yeah.
She didn't want to do that. Like, she wanted to eat other stuff, but it's the only thing that her body said, right, this is good, thank you. Let's keep this program going forward. So, I really appreciate that we've got that opportunity to provide for these people.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you have some former vegans and vegetarians. How do they go from being vegans and coming to you and getting their lamb and beef?
Well, it's all pretty similar, actually. They're normally they're all long term. So all the ones I'm thinking of now are sort of 10, 15, 20 years. Again, mainly women. I think that generally, I don't know what the stats are on veganism or vegetarianism, but like I know quite a few dudes that are plant-based, and they went plant-based because they started chasing chicks that were plant-based. Common thread. Like, any dude wakes up and goes, I'm never eating meat again. But these women, after 20 years, they're probably the same sort of trajectory that you're talking about. They're needing to address some things in their life with their own health. Our bodies deteriorate as it is. If we don't need to throw fuel on the fire and exacerbate that. And most of them have come to an inflection point where they're like, maybe we do need some eggs or beef, but they do have this personal value, this conviction that animals ought not be abused and made to suffer, which I share. I was, a couple of years before I started on this farming journey, I was not far away off giving up meat myself. I'd seen the documentaries, I'd done my research, I saw how they were raising pigs, I saw what the feedlots were doing, how chickens were being processed, and I just thought this whole thing is gross. Like, I understand economies of scale and price point and all this, but I thought, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want my diet to be subsidized by the suffering of animals. So I've got a lot of sympathy for these people when they come to the farm, and I can talk their language. And I've really done the best I can to honor animals while they're alive on our farm, and let them express their nature as best they can, letting pigs wallow, letting birds roost, letting ruminants lounge around. So the vegans still have that sensibility, the recovering dietary people in question, and they still want to be, they don't want to feel like they're part of the problem. So I guess they've sourced out animals that are being kept the best way possible. And, it makes us feel great that we're one of the farms they choose to support.
Yeah. Do they ever tell you about their, their health problems or issues that they have and why they need to change?
Oh, look, some do, and I can't remember the specifics. There's been so many of them, but like I've known a lot of there's one local carnivore GP in town that the local fertility clinic refers a lot of young ladies to, and because they're having trouble getting pregnant, and that's why they've gone to the fertility clinic. And these aren't old girls; these are girls in their 20s and 30s that are having trouble getting pregnant. And which is a real shock for people, because you go through school and you grow up and you're young, and everyone says make sure you put a condom or a boy's going to sneeze on you and get you pregnant. So everyone thinks it just happens like that, and then you start to try, and nothing happens the first month, and then for a lot of people, young people, they're trying years and years and years, but they're in such an environment. Yeah, exactly. It's emotionally tolling, which adds to the problem. It's compounding. The more you want it, the harder it is, and we're just completely drowning in endocrine disruptors and everything. So this local GP that the IVF clinic sends their clients to, all he does is gets them to watch endocrine disruptors a little bit and cut carbs out of their diet and eat more red meat. And they all get, not all, but most of them get pregnant pretty quick. And we end up with a lot of them. So there's an example of people wanting to add meat into their diet of a health issue just to procreate, having trouble breeding as a species because our health is so poor. I know if I put skinny cows in the paddock that I've starved, my conception rate is going to be really low. But if I've looked after the nutrition of those animals and I put them in with the bull, my conception rate is going to be a lot higher. Like you sort of say this stuff, you refer to humans as animals in this way that, our nutrient intake has an effect on things like fertility, and people think it's woo-woo. But I just look back at animals every time, and we know skinny sows don't cycle. We know stressed chickens don't ovulate and lay eggs. Like it's all connected. We have the same needs as what these animals have, which is environment, diet.
Yeah, of course.
So what do you think?
It seems to me, Jacob, that there's been a long time. I don't know how long, but it seems that there's been a long time that humans think that humans are not also just animals, and this leads to all kinds of problems and many other problems that we're talking about here, and a lot of other problems too. The fact is, we're just animals, so we need to treat ourselves as that.
Yeah, we can learn a lot from watching animals.
And those cows come back in a season, a few months.
Well, the way we're running our mob at the moment is we're leaving the bulls in all the time. So on most of our mobs, which is a little bit heretic, you're not really meant to do it. The beef breeders out there roll their eyes at me. Yeah, we're having, especially our Ngoonis. Like I've got one Ngoonie cow that looks like she's done a calf twice this year, the way she's going, which is pretty cool.
Well,
what do you could you describe maybe a little bit of how do you what's a day in a life of a cow that on your farm?
Sure. So I'll talk about our mob at the Thaguna farm. We've got about 50 cows in that group. There's a few steers in there that are nice, pretty animals, and we keep them on that farm because of the farm tours. People can look at them. There's 3 bulls in that mob, and there's no need to have 3 bulls there, but we've got a range of bulls so we can use different genetics, and we just store them because when a cow's pregnant, you can't get her pregnant again. So when it's pregnant to the bull you want, you can just bring all the other bulls in, and then we've only got one mob to manage. So at the moment, Our cows, we were on river flats here in Thaguna, so, you know, very lush, fertile pastures. We move them every day to a fresh paddock. So we go out normally in the early afternoon, because if you can move your animals onto pasture during a growing season, which is when the grass is green, if you can move them in the afternoon, the grass is actually more nutritious for the cattle than first thing in the morning. There's a few issues with moving your cows first thing in the morning, and we do it sometimes if our chores require it. But the first thing is, if it's cold and the grass has a frost on it, all the grass they step on that's frosted breaks, and you lose that forage. It falls on the ground, and you know, they don't necessarily want to clean it up. And the other thing is, grass is more nutritious in the afternoon, and you can prove this just by doing a simple Briggs test, which is you get the grass, you roll it up till moisture starts coming out of the leaves, and then you put it in a little Brix refractometer, which gives you the sugar level in the grass. And the more time during the day that the grass has had time to absorb sunshine, the more sugar and nutrients that's in the grass. And we're talking about, you know, substantial gains. So we try to move our cows early afternoon into their fresh paddock every day, so we can give them that little bit of lolly store grass, and, you know, give them everything that they need. We have a little portable water trough that we drag along with them, and at the moment we've got those. There's probably about 60 head in that mob, and they're grazing on about a third of a hectare, 3,000 meters squared every day. So that's about what would it be? Half an acre, maybe.
Wow, and you move them that much?
We move our cattle mobs every single day.
Are you moving the fences along with them?
Yeah, so we've got electric step-in fences. So we've got like fiberglass step-in posts and an electric 400-meter electric wires, and we roll them out new paddock every day.
We used to do the same thing on the dairy farm. In the spring and fall, we would pasture the dairy cows, and we would segment off big, long, rectangular field, like maybe an 80-acre field, and we would just step them down the field.
Yes, exactly the same thing. Yep, because we don't want them in a big area for a long time, because then they're grazing around their feces. And when you have a blade of grass, like let's say for the people that might be watching, I'm holding up my fingers as blades of grass, and then they prune them and they graze them down. In 2 or 3 days in a growing season, they're going to be coming back already, and they're going to be drawing energy out of their roots because they've lost their solar panels. So they're going to be drawing energy out of their roots to get those solar panels back up. But in 3 days, you've got these beautiful virgin leaves of grass that are brand new and super sweet. So the cattle come and eat them again. And now you've got no solar panels, no leaves left, and the energy's being absorbed out of the roots. And you've just overgrazed that plant and hurt its regrowth potential. And it only took you 3 days to do it. Yeah. You had them in one paddock for 3 days and you've stunted your grass. But if you move them every day, they never get a chance to take that second bite. So our grass recovery is a lot faster. And the amount of feed we grow on our farm with no synthetic fertilizers or anything like that, like my stocking rate is extremely heavy compared to everyone else in my region. And my farms, I got grass up to my waist over all our properties. And we've got neighboring farms that are set stocked, which means all the cattle have access of one big paddock all year long. And it's like a putting green. There's parts of it that are already turning to dust in the middle of spring. And they would have less cows per acre than what I do. It just comes down to management.
Fantastic.
So you just
do you the cows, they only eat grass? That's it.
Yeah, we don't believe in feeding any ruminant herbivores anything but herbs. So, no grain for our cattle. We do feed grain to pigs and chickens, but pigs and chickens are omnivores, and we've got them outside so they can also graze. They can also chase crickets and bugs and worms and whatever other dietary input they want to forage for. But they get ad lib grain, so as much as they want. But our sheep and cattle are grass only.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you talk about your grazing strategy, because it's you're moving them daily, like you say. And for the average person in the city, they don't understand. It can be tricky to move cows. They can get out, they run away. They're not like sheep. They don't move as one like sheep do.
Well, the thing is when you do it every day, and every time you do it, there's a reward, which is a fresh,
so they're
fresh
learning.
blade of grass. If we drive over to the cattle 2 o'clock in the afternoon and stand there next to the paddock and then drive off, they'll start mooing at us, saying, "Why didn't you move us?" Like we do this every
Wow.
single day. We've got a customer coming in there. They're like, "We know what's happening." So our cat, it's the best job on the farm. Like, it's better than collecting eggs. It's better than moving pigs. Like, a lot of the jobs are very fun, but moving cattle, we have a call. We call them, we reel back the hot wire, and they all run through. And we'd like to keep the area they run through a little bit shorter, because then they can come through sort of 1 or 2 at a time, and you get to watch and inspect all the animals as they come through. They kick their legs in the air, they get all frisky.
Yeah, cows, when they get excited, it's well, like you say, living around cows it's a beautiful lifestyle. Cows have a lot of, like, they were my favorite animal on the farm as opposed to goats, like pigs. I always gravitated toward the cows there. And you're out in pastures, you're in the sunshine. They live nicely. They live out of the dirt with their feet. They have beautiful lives if it's done right.
Well, they've got a lot of dignity, cattle. It's why a lot of cultures and religions over time have worshipped them, because of the value and the way they hold themselves. But, if I ever want a quiet moment to sit and contemplate for whatever reason, I go and sit with the cattle.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible.
You say you also so you have sheep and goats as well.
I don't have goats. We have had goats, but I believe in a type of farming where the animals have to be fit for purpose.
Yes.
I believe if you can have an animal that's fit for purpose, it removes the need for dependency on drugs and prop-ups. And the reality is, goat's a desert-dwelling animal, and we're on the river flats. And the one time we had goats, all their feet curled up, and our neighbors breed goats, and they're treating with foot baths and trimming feet, 6 to 9 times a year, just to keep on top of the rotting feet. And I just don't think that's fair on the animals when you could put cows there and there's no issues. So we do have sheep. Sheep do pretty well in our area. I've got 2 different flocks of sheep at the moment. I've got a composite, which is like a crossbred mixed bag, called Catalyst. They're a hair sheep, so they're a white hair sheep. They lose hair. We don't shear them. And then I've got another flock of ewes from an African breed called Damara, which is pretty goaty, ironically, but they're very hardy, and they are sheep. They're multicolored hair sheep as well, and I've just picked up a heap of them. I bought the dip, saw them cheap, so we bought them.
I saw that. So you put so much passion into giving these animals quality of life, with the experience and knowledge to know that that's going to come out in the meat. And I see lots of your posts, and I haven't tasted. I really want to taste those Nguni cattle one day. Next time I get to Australia, I'm going to come have a steak with you.
Yeah,
but one of the questions I really wanted to ask you was, so we hear a lot about trauma in the meat from feedlots. If they have to go through an industrial kill process, that inflects a lot of trauma into the meat. So I wanted to ask you, how do you tell, or can you tell, can you associate the word trauma with the look and the feel of meat? And if you can, what does that look like?
Every now and then we'll have a body of beef come through the butchery, and the butchers will say, "Oh, that one cut dark." Cut dark is the phrase, and the meat's almost more purple than red. It's very dark colored meat. And the thought in the industry behind that is that specific animal, for whatever reason, was very stressed just before slaughter and had a lot of adrenaline coursing through it. And they're a pain to butcher. They don't cut up properly. The meat sticks to the knives. The meat goes sticky. It's like jelly almost. And normally when you cut a big steak, when you cut into a rump or something, it sort of opens up. This hugs the knife, and it makes the meat a bit tougher. In terms of a different taste, I'm really not sure, because we don't just have one breed of cattle on the farm. We we sell, I just buy what's available and finish it off and breed it. So I've got Shorthorns and Hereford and Angus and Drought Master and Charolais and Inguni and Jersey. And I think that there's, a lot of things that can make meat taste different. And I don't know if I've ever had that sort of meat taste that poorly, but it definitely, there's a visual aesthetic that the industry thinks is from a stressed animal.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, like, I milked cows from, 7, 8 years old till 17 or 18 years old. And sometimes within that herd of cows, you would have one specific cow that was a lot crazier than the other ones.
Yeah.
And they would get stressed faster. And in the process of milking them, for example, if you knocked over like a stainless steel pail, a certain cow would get very bothered by that, and they would have like a runny diarrhea crap. And the smell, I always knew the smell of the animals that got highly stressed were different than, a lot of the herds will have, I grew up on a 45 cow dairy, so small, which allowed us to do the pasturing like you did and stuff. And some of the cows, they smell clean. Like when you're putting the machines on their udders, like this big, warm, clean, the whole animal is a lovely, it smells good. But then the high stressed animals, they have everything from their skin to how the crap falls off their fur. They're not as high as a quality as animal. So they're more susceptible to the trauma. Certain animals are more susceptible to the trauma they get.
Yeah, definitely. Like some cattle walk on the truck and they're fine, and other ones don't want to get on at all. And there's probably a range of reasons. I've had a few cattle over the years that refuse to get on the truck, and we could have got them on if we belted them and hit them with an electric prodder and screamed at them and pulled our hair out in the process. But we just let them off and called the on-site slaughterman out and shot them in the paddock and dressed them in the paddock, and it ended up being a lot nicer for the cattle. A lot safer for farmers. And, we can't legally sell that meat. We can't slaughter an animal on farm and then sell that meat, but, we eat a lot of meat ourselves. So if that ever happens, we just, move forward with that process and put that in.
How come they don't let you sell that meat?
Hasn't gone through a inspected abattoir.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, tight rules, I guess, everywhere.
Do you feel constrained by these regulations?
Absolutely. I could be, my business could be so much bigger if I wasn't always having to, like, once you're in the rhythm and you know what the regulations are, they're not too hard to appease. But trying to figure it all out in the first place, like, it's not simple. When I had to build an egg grading room, so when we collect our eggs, we needed room to store them in where we can candle them, look for cracks, inspect the quality, stamp them ready for sale, pack them. It's got to be a certain room. And when you download the government guidelines on how to build it, it's like an inch thick, and you read it, and the language they use, it's deliberately impossible to understand what they're actually trying to get at. And it took me ages to wrap my head. I eventually built one, and now when other farmers want to start doing chicken eggs and they call me, I said, "Oh, we're trying to build our grading room and we can't even wrap our head around where to begin." I say, "Look, it's easy. You need washable surfaces. So your floor, your walls, your ceiling all need to be washable. The cool room panels. You need to have a dual basin sink with hot water. You need to have a wall-mounted paper towel, and that's it. That's all you need. And they'll come in, they'll inspect your room, and they'll certify you. So simple." So, it was months of headache trying to actually figure out that that's all they wanted. It should just be a one-page document. So, like, behind every the state that I live in, which is New South Wales, isn't even the worst of it. In Victoria, if you're a butcher and you want to make small goods to sell, so bacon, ham, cabana, Kransky, whatever it is, every single cook you do, so every batch of small goods you produce, you need to send away a sample to get tested in a lab at your own expense, which will cost you, I think it's like $160 or something. So a butcher might only want to cook 10 kilos of cabana, but then he's got this $200 fixed expense to get a culture test of bacteria so we can make sure it's safe from E. coli or salmonella or something. But there's no requirement that you hold the goods back before the test comes back. So the test takes 2 or 3 weeks to get back. And in that time frame, you've already sold all the goods. So it wouldn't have protected anyone anyway, because if they've done a recall, it's already all been eaten. So no butchers in Victoria cook their own small goods anymore. There's just a few big centralized small goods guys that instead of doing 10 kilo batches, they do 1 ton batches, and they can send off that same $160 test. And then they wholesale bacon and everything to everyone else. But like, that's just another example of regulations just making it impossible to get off the ground.
Yeah, good.
Wow.
Jacob, how do you prefer? I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you cook your meat and your eggs, and what do you recommend? What's the best way? What do you like? Tell me about that.
Well, I like it the way my wife does it. She does most around
She
here,
does?
but she does all. My wife does all the cooking. Like I can make myself a meal if she's not around. But you know, my wife, she's an amazing cook, and she's got a knack for it, and she's got a passion for it. And something that'll take me an hour and I'll pull my hair out, she could cook 6 of those dishes at the same time and just hold a conversation and feed the baby, and like she's, you know, just a gifted lady. But I have been watching her do our steaks, because I think if anything, if I ever need to cook myself a steak, I can't be grilling myself up a well-done T-bone and having that. So, you know, we teach a lot of people how to cook steak, because they come here and they buy a pack of Scotch or Porterhouse for $40. They don't want to go home and ruin it. A lot of people don't have that food intelligence as a culture.
Yeah.
You know, people don't know how to handle food. They come in, all my meat here is frozen in cryovac bags. People go, how do I defrost it? They want to go home and put it in the microwave to defrost it. They're going to destroy it.
Yeah.
So the way we cook a steak is we take it out of the cryovac bag. So we defrost it in the fridge. Takes a day, no problems. Take it out of the cryovac bag, sit it on a tray like a plate, and put it on the kitchen bench. Takes maybe an hour, and we let the beef come up to room temp. You don't want to put a cold steak on a hot grill because it goes tense. Before we put it on the grill, we get the grill nice and hot. We use, you know, cast iron or stainless steel. We get it nice and hot. Heaps of salt and pepper on the steak. Put it on the grill, and we cook it until you see a bit of that red liquid come through it. People think it's blood coming to the surface, but it's not blood. It's a protein called hemoglobin. You wait till you see that protein come through, and then we flip it 2 minutes on the other side, and then we put it on a plate to rest for another 5 minutes, and then we eat it. You know, and that's rare. So we like our steaks rare. We eat it rare, and you know, that's a good steak every time. The only exceptions to that would be if it's a T-bone, which has a bone in it. We call steaks different ways to you, but a T-bone has the New York strip and the fillet on it, on the bone. Yeah. We will sit that bone side up for a while to let some heat get up the bone and render that a bit. And we will, on a porterhouse, which you call a New York strip, if it's got a nice juicy fat cap, we will cook the fat caps on its end to render the fat, make it a bit softer and, you know, nicer to chew as well. But that's me talking about stuff I've got no idea about. That's me.
Well, neither does Klaus, because he eats his raw.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, some of it anyway. Yeah. I don't mind. Anyway, I cook when I make my steak. It's pretty much exactly as you described. I've been doing some so-called dry brining for quite a while now, which seems to make the meat. It gives it a nicer color, and maybe it seems maybe to taste a little bit more intense because there's less moisture in the meat when it's been dry brining for days or a week. But it might just be in my head. I don't know. It's
I think the same as you. I'm never sure on the taste test because I do like 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks. I'll even leave it in a month. And then
why not?
I experiment a lot with that. I'll put it on the counter. Like I'll leave a steak on the counter for a week. And I like eating, I like aging all of my steaks to different degrees, but definitely I think longer is better, but I like to put a tea towel over it in the fridge so it doesn't get too dried out on the ends.
It's interesting, you know, you leave it on the bench in a week. Most people out there would think, oh, how haven't you killed yourself with food poisoning? Is what I mean. This food intelligence that we've lost.
Yeah.
You know, I know
The
people.
psyop knows no limits. And that's
really,
like,
it's really odd because of course I would instinctively think that you can't do that. In fact, just last week I forgot a steak overnight on the counter. It was covered, so I forgot it because I couldn't see it. So then the next day I said, "Oh, I forgot it here," and then I smelled it. It smelled fine. I cooked it, and it was fine.
Yeah,
it was out of the fridge for I don't know 24 hours maybe.
We've got a rule on the farm, or a little truism, and the same's in the kitchen. Your nose knows. You know, we've got a built-in defense system. If something's sour and bitter and bile, it means it's unhealthy. It means it's septic. It's anaerobic. You know, you don't want it. Whether that means the chicken shed needs more carbon in the floor, or you know, your steak's rotten. Your nose will tell you.
Yeah, and that's one of these. It's an issue I run into in carnivore. A lot of carnivores, they're outsourcing their own senses to science, looking for feedback to make themselves feel better. And one of the most profound things I went through on my own carnivore journey was becoming more reattached to what my own senses were actually telling me, even from hormones with testosterone to smell to food, just becoming more in touch with what was actually going on in my body. And I love to tell the story. I was working for a week one summer, and I just took a bag of steaks with me to work. I'm like, okay, I'll have 1 or 2 steaks at the end of the workday. I put in a black waterproof bag, no ice, put it in the back of my truck. 40 degrees out in the summer. You know, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and I'm like, oh, okay, I might be here 8, 9 days. By the time I was in a week, my brain was telling me, this is a dangerous thing to eat. Do not touch it. It's been in 40 degrees. It's been slow cooking for 7 days almost. But I smelled it, and I was like, well, I don't smell any rot in it. So I ate it, and that night, that steak, it's like it cleansed my soul. It was like the last bit of carbohydrates that I'd eaten at 20 and stuff were just expelled in a nuclear storm of steak bacteria. And then after that, it's now I think I could eat a run over snake on the road after 3 weeks. Like, I don't think anything would affect me.
That's so good. Well, you definitely build up a tolerance to handling, you know, more things. I had a farmhand that worked on the farm for a couple of years. His name was John. He was a beautiful man. He was a really unique character, and he would eat roadkill. So he's eaten blue-tongued lizard, which is a native reptile. He's eaten red-bellied black snake. If he sees it on the side of the road, he stops. He rides his motorbike everywhere. He goes over, and if it's not stiff yet, he'll take it. So, a few weeks before he moved up north to be closer to his family, but one of his last shifts with me, he turns up to the farm, riding down the road to the shed on his motorbike with a dead kangaroo sitting on his lap with his head over his shoulder, hugging this kangaroo because he's been riding out to the farm and he saw it on the side of the road as roadkill. He got over it was fresh, and he couldn't carry it, so he sat it on his lap and he dinked it out to the farm, and then he's hanging it up in the shed, and he's gutted it in the shed, and he ate this kangaroo over the next couple of weeks.
That is unbelievable.
That's so good. I've been processing chickens with him. We'll be slaughtering chickens, and there'll be an egg inside one of the chicken before the shells come on it, so it's like a squishy. And he just looked at it and goes, oh, I wonder what that tastes like. Eats it. He just picks the chicken heart straight out of the carcass, eats it. Just, he's so curious about everything, and he's got no fear.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But I bet you 15,000 years ago, that was an average guy's diet. We've become, we've just become so sensitized to food cleanliness, the whole 9 yards. But I mean, that's something I'm sure all three of us can relate to is, you know, you start carnivore and then there's like a multi-year process where once or twice a week a light bulb comes in your head and you're like, fuck, they lied to me. Or wait, like, really? Oh, it's like this? That was true for me I really went through that for a couple of years. Everything from how we feed our kids, how we educate our kids, what we eat, and like modern man is so conditioned to eat through tradition and comfort. Every weekend, sporting events, you know, it all stacks. Like carbs stack up in our body and they stack up disease. So, but that was it. Kind of brings me to another question I really wanted to ask you. So, if you had a magic wand and you extrapolated your business out 5 years from now, what would it look like, and what would your customer base look like?
Yeah, well, I don't really plan too well, so we're going to be freestyling it here a little bit. But I would love to think in 5 years that we had our own slaughtering facility and we could start to slaughter our own animals. Because right now we butcher, but we don't have any control over the kill side of it, and it's highly regulated and it's very monopolized. So I've got one abattoir within a day's drive that can do pigs. I've got one that can do cattle and sheep. And we drive like 10 hours round trip to get our chickens done. So so we would love to do it on site, so we could just walk the cattle straight from the paddock into the slaughter yard. That'd be better for everyone. It'd reduce transport costs. It'd reduce stress, be better welfare. But also,
how come that's not done now?
Regulations. It's you know, I could finance and build a small abattoir on our farm. Like we could get one up for a couple hundred, like $400,000 or $500,000, which, you know, I'd be able to make it happen. We'd do something, but no one's really proofed it, and the regulatory burden's big. You know, it's a lot of a headache to jump through. So yeah, I'd love to have that integrated. And I'd love our enterprises to be a lot bigger. Like we're not a teeny tiny farm, but we're definitely not a big farm. We'd love to be feeding more people and having, because every animal that's on our farm is one less animal in a feedlot, one less animal in a factory farm. And with these animals on our farm, we can restore landscape function, we can build fertility, we can improve the animal experience, and we can heal people with better quality food for their diet. So every time our business grows, there's so much good that happens across the board. And I'm not saying that to promote the business. This is why I chose this business. Like I own a bicycle shop in town. I've got a restaurant. You know, I breed dogs. There's a lot of different things I've done, and I didn't need this. I didn't need to become a farmer, but I kept looking at these systems and thinking, as this business grows, there's so much good that radiates off the mission in terms of the environment or animal welfare or people's health and people's enjoyment. And it's a good business. It makes money. So I'd love to have an on-site abattoir, and I'd love to have a herd of a couple hundred Nguni cows. At the moment, I've got 2 purebred Ngunis, and I'm currently looking at doing some IVF programs to expand and grow more purebred cows quicker. You know, I don't love interfering and sort of using unnecessary inputs, but if we could do some embryo programs and drop some embryos into some recipient cows and get some more purebred animals on the ground and build that herd faster, I think the long-term benefit would, you know, be worth it.
And you'll have the customers there waiting for you if you had the cows?
Yeah, everything I grow, I sell. Yeah, we're constantly scaling. I've got to jump back and forward a bit. So like I'll be on the farm ramping up production, and then all of a sudden at the butchery it's like, holy moly, there's way too much meat backing up here. So then I'll go back into the butchery for a few weeks and ramp up sales and tweak some systems, and I sort of just bounce back and forward doing that. But you know, in terms of beef and lamb, just cannot keep up. Chicken, we're at a good pace. Pork, I'm probably a little bit over committed with pork, but pigs are so fun to raise that I committed to some really big forward orders of pigs. You know, we're on track to do probably almost 400 pigs this year. So it's a lot of pork chops to move for me. I'm the only guy that packs the orders, so it's a lot of boxes.
Wow,
Busy
you're
guy.
busy.
Yeah.
Busy.
Jacob,
But you love it.
Jacob, do you have? I wonder if you have some advice for carnivores or other people for good quality food and good quality life.
Yeah, sure. Well, if meat eaters are wanting to source food that they know is, clean and green and whatever sort of tagline you want to throw at it, the best thing you can do is meet your farmer. A lot of people talk about the good quality meat from the local butcher. One of my customers went to a butcher the other day and they said, "Is this beef minced grass fed?" And he said, "I don't know." Like not all butchers are equal. I'm sure some care a lot more than others. But if you go to the source of production and you find a farmer that's selling direct and you meet them and tour their farm and you're impressed with their operation, I think you can be a lot more assured with what you're actually purchasing and where your dollars are going, because every dollar you spend is a vote for the future you want. We get the future we deserve, and we vote for that with our dollars or our Bitcoins or our gold bullion or whatever your mode of barter is. So I'd recommend people get in touch with a farmer direct and support them.
Do you have any
because the harder the questions you ask the farmer, go to the farmer and say, "Oh, do you drench your animals? Do you worm your animals?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, we do because we need to." So, well, I listened to some nutbag guy on the internet, and he said because he moves his cows all the time, he doesn't have to drench them, and so his meats have got less chemical residue in it. And challenge your farmers, because I get challenged all the times. I've got chicken and pork consumers that are continuously challenging me about feeding soy to my pigs and chickens. They don't want to be eating pork and chicken from an animal that's been fed soy. But, so as I'm constantly getting that feedback and being challenged from my consumers, it's making me, either defend or change my farming practices. And there's a lot of knock-ons. Now I need to go back to my mill and I've got to work with the dietitian to formulate a new feed for my chickens and my pigs. And I've got to run a new budget because my feed costs more. It's like, it's not simple, but I can't follow the market and give people what they want unless they're willing to, pressure me and tell them exactly what they're valuing. So when people are wanting this stuff, you need to challenge your farmer and say, I don't want it to have that X treatment. I don't want that breed. I don't want it to be killed that way, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Wow. Another question I wanted to ask you was, so you have an online butcher shop, so people come in and they can process all of their shop purchases without anybody being there. So I assume then they have like a customer profile.
Yeah, so they get a unique PIN code. They let themselves in with the PIN, and then they use an app on their phone to purchase stuff. They hit pay, and it just comes off their debit card through Stripe and online bank, and it's in and out. There's little security cameras up there watching them as they're in and out. And yeah, it's been running like that for 2.5 years. It's been working really well.
And so then I guess you're able to see which people eat the most amount of meat and what types of meat they eat.
Definitely. And it is interesting looking at that, because we have some clients that come in the butchery very rarely and just buy choice cuts. And what that tells me is that this person really values what we have, but they don't feel like they can afford it with their everyday consumption. So they just come and they buy choice cuts for celebratory dinners, birthday dinners, whatever it means, But then we've got other groups that come in, and every week they spend a couple $100 on mince, young families. And, that tells me that person really values what we have, and they're willing to sacrifice what cuts they eat and make other, and prioritize what they're putting on the dinner plates of their kids. And it's super interesting. Like the lady that came in and bought stuff while I was talking to you just before, when I said somebody's coming in now, she's a vegan and she doesn't eat meat at all, but she comes and she buys her pet mince off me because she had an issue about, she knew her dog was getting sick eating carbohydrate-based kibble, so she wanted to get meat for her dog, but she had issues about where to source that, so she sourced it off me. So I get to see, all sorts of things.
That's interesting. So then have you taken any of that consumer intelligence that you're gaining? Because like something I learned with eating carnivore for this many years and feeding my kids is there's a certain amount, like if you're eating a certain amount of pounds per week, per month, per year, it affects your health like 70%, 80%, 90%. When you're starting to eat steak up at, like no carbs, the waterfall health effects off of that, I really found when I went completely clean for months at a time, I felt superhuman. But it's also true that when I was just started eating steak more times, I felt better. So I'm just wondering if there's any like consumer intelligence that you can do to kind of educate these people. Say, hey, last year you ate X amount of beef and it cost you X amount. Here's some different meat strategies you can do that's going to take you up another X amount in protein, and these are some of the health effects that you can realize from that.
Yeah, it's a fun idea, and I could definitely pull that data out. I guess there's so many spinning plates in my world. I've got to pick my battles.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't imagine. Yeah, you doing it all.
Yeah, well, like and there's a lot of curveballs. Like for instance, today's Thursday. On Monday, we got a weather warning that there was going to be a rain event come through with 150 to 300 mil of rain, which is that's 6 to 12 inches of rain. And we're on river flats. So if that happens, all my chickens drown, all my baby lambs wash away. So three of us spent 2 days hauling ass, moving 1,000 chickens, setting them up in the shed in a deep litter area there, moving all the sheep up to higher ground, tying down all of our portable structures, because we've got all these different types of portable infrastructure for our cattle and animals to have shade and all different things. And it ended up being 60 mil. It was a nice shower, and nothing came of it. But there was just like 2 hectic days that we didn't ask for, squeezed in on top of. I still got to pack my orders. We still have to butcher the thing. We still have to go to the abattoir. Still have to feed the chickens, collect the eggs, all the normal stuff. So yeah, there's always a lot going on, and you can try your best to systemize it, but there's just constant. You're dealing with Mother Nature, right? Like it's only a few hours away. There's towards the east coast of Australia. There's a 5,500 hectare, like a 10,000 acre bushfire that's out of control, and our region's trying to send helicopters there to fight the fire, but the helicopters can't fly because the rain's so heavy. Wow. Like when you're dealing with Mother Nature, you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, you do. Well, that's it's fascinating. And so there's a lot of similarities between vegans and carnivores at the end of the day, and especially at the point when it concerns animal welfare, wouldn't you say?
I think most carnivores that I've come across, want to be eating healthy animals. They don't want to be eating beef from animals that have been standing knee deep in their own feces in a feedlot for 3 months. That because you've come at it from a point of view like we want the best for our health. That's why people have chosen this diet. I think a lot of the veganism people come at it for 2 different reasons. One's health and one's animal welfare. And I've got more in common with the average vegan than I do with the average food eater. The person that just turns up at Safeway or the supermarket and just grabs the Fruit Loops and grabs the Twinkies and grabs the Devon and the white
because
bread.
they're trying. They're at least trying.
Vegans are trying, and I share all of the sympathies. All the footage they use about animals being abused, I also find abhorrent. I don't like the factory. I've got a lot in common with them. We just get stuck on the point whether there's a moral justification for consuming the animal at the end point. But I think vegans and carnivores actually do have a lot in common. But rhetoric and culture sort of makes the conversation really challenging.
I think.
Do you get them on your farm tours?
Heaps.
And are they surprised by what they see?
And I love having them. They're the most informed. They care the most. When they do decide to eat meat, they're the one group that never care about price because they've got such strong convictions and values that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is. You know, most of them, a lot of them are. I've had a couple that have come out and had a nice day and decide not to keep eating meat, but I've won. You know, they only come out because they're thinking about dipping their toe back into animal protein. Like, they're not coming out to pick a fight with me. I've never had anyone come to the farm to sort of take a swing. So yeah, I've always got along really well with them, and they always enjoy their time out there.
Well, fascinating.
I think the
So I
vegans
guess
have been very important for making, I think, treading a path of having, let's say, really focusing on having a healthier lifestyle. And I think they've made it much easier to be carnivore or have a ketogenic diet or have a specific limiting diet, and generate more choices also in the stores. So I think they've done a good job of paving a path.
And I actually think veganism got helped because the metrics are so good. You know, and what I mean by that is I know a lot of restaurateurs, because we've got a cafe in town. I know a lot of the chefs around town. I know a lot of the proprietors. Everyone in the food industry loves vegan dishes because they cost nothing to plate up, because there's no animal protein on it. So it's peas and beans and lupins and bread and whatever else. And you can charge the same as a meat dish, if not more, for it, because it's a specialist item. So restaurants love vegan dishes. The margin, it'll be the best margin.
Yeah.
If you go to a restaurant and you buy a steak for $50, it's probably the most expensive dish on the dinner menu, but it's also likely grossing the lowest amount out of all the dishes. It's the lowest profit dish out of the whole menu, but the
Indeed.
vegan dishes are the best. So it's not like there's some big conspiracy from all the restaurants all around the world to get behind veganism, but it makes sense. If you can make more money, we're all scrapping margin everywhere. And so I just saw that get adopted wildly. You know, it's tapering off a bit now, I think. But you know, for a few years there, it was every menu had multiple items. We've gone the other way on our menu at our cafe. We've even had to upset the plant-based people because our French fries that we sell, we deep fry in tallow now. So there's nothing on the menu that's 100%. We can option things for people, but you know, we don't use any seed oils. We don't use any refined sugar. It's all honey and animal fats, and you know, and we're just trying to, you know, service share valued people.
Nice.
And you know, at the end of the day, when you look at the time horizon of farmers, you're brand new in this. You've only been at this for a drop in the bucket. Like, some farms last for multiple generations. So when I see what you're doing, it gives me hope, because I'm of the belief that you said there's about 100,000 people in your population base where you live.
Yes.
So, you know, if we can get 10,000 committed carnivores who are walking around their communities jacked, healthy, and tanned, I think then we have a hope. We have a hope to get this. Like, I think that the carnivore diet should be at least as popular as CrossFit got. CrossFit seemed to inculcate itself across every suburb in the Western US, Australia too. And that was, it was a fad fitness, and carnivore. I mean, it's not really a fad diet, but I think the people who are coming into it have the similar passion, because it's a similar feeling when you're starting to reclaim your health. So that's, when I see what you're doing there, then you're setting your community up very well for success. And being a carnivore has made me a real optimist about the world. So I think that I predict big things for you. I think it's going to be amazing, and you're just getting started. And I see you got your oldest son. What's his name?
Otto.
Otto. He's your right-hand man. And as he grows, your work burden will, you'll be able to get more strategic as he handles the day-to-day.
I said he's just turned 6, and we're homeschooling our kids. I've got 3 now, and I said to Otto the other day, Otto, when you if you ever want to come and work with Dad on the farm, which animals do you think you'd want to look after the most? We're just driving out to a friend's house, and I thought, I wonder what animals he likes the most. And he goes, oh, probably all of them. I'll probably just run the whole farm. I said, no, you got to pick one. And he picked the chickens in the brooder. He liked the baby chicks. So we might have a good chicken farmer in our midst. But, you know, last to sort of riff on that a little bit, something that I am hoping to achieve just within the next year or two, when you asked about the farm's 5-year journey, is, you know, we're employing like 4 full-time equivalents between the farm and the butchery at the moment. I would love to have a specific farm manager for each enterprise to really take each enterprise to the next level. So, you know, one guy full-time on the egg chickens, one guy full-time on the pigs, you know, and because at the moment we've got 2 farm hands that sort of race around and they look after everything together as a team, and it works well, and they're very efficient for, you know, what they're trying to achieve. But I'd love to get in some specialist labor that can be very specifically channeled and really, you know, improve the systems as best we can, you know, squeeze all the production out that we can, and build those efficiencies and bring back the cost of our produce to make it more accessible to people.
Well, then you're growing the highest quality meat on the earth.
Of course.
And that's, you know, so much in carnivore is like, people come into it, they say, well, what does it cost? And that's another conversation. If somebody, well, isn't it expensive? I say, like, it's not even a conversation I'm comfortable to have anymore, because the entire presupposition is broken. It's like, what should we spend? What's the very first thing we should spend our disposable income on? High quality food. That's like the first thing I do when I get a check is go buy a mountain of steak. And it's like, we don't even, I don't even think the market can kind of separate out the different qualities yet and give it an accordance price. They kind of lump it all together, and people have this feeling like it's expensive, but then, and it takes a lot of eating before you realize, in fact, how inexpensive it truly is.
Well, it's such a disingenuous comment, because, you know, to begin with, all they're thinking about straight away is New York strip 3 meals a day. But, you know, we've got a whole world, a whole community saying they can't afford it, when, you know, porn takes up 60% of the bandwidth on the internet, you know, like OnlyFans, and no one wants to walk. Everyone wants to get a cab or get an Uber. We spend $300 on designer jeans that already have holes ripped in the knees.
Yeah.
You know, how many pairs of pants do you need? You need a new phone every year. Like, you know, the whole designer glassware, getting a haircut by a barber every 4 weeks. Like, our priorities are completely cooked. I've got a few fantastic local families, young families that are big, 4, 6, 8 kids, that buy, and single income families, homeschool families, but from the local Catholic community here. And they buy all their meat off me, and they make large sacrifices to do it, because it's to feed that big family is expensive at the best of time, and they want to, and they're not carnivore families, but they eat a lot of meat, and they want that meat to be from me, quality meat, and, you know, they make it work.
Yeah.
You know, mum picks up a cleaning gig and earns a bit of cash. No one, you know, they don't get to go do the lavish ballet lessons, or they don't go and drive all over the state to chase little 7-year-old Jimmy's soccer career, or all these other stupid things that we do. You know, even that's normalized in our community, to drive all over the country, chasing a little kid's. I'm not saying kids shouldn't play sport, but what are we sitting in the car? My sister, I've got a little sister who's 13. My parents just drove her 8 hours round trip for a running race. And I said, I didn't know she ran. They go, oh, she doesn't. So you go for an 8-hour trip, so you've lost a day of earnings, you burnt all this fuel, all this money to go for a running race for a kid that doesn't even have an interest in running. Like, and that's normal. That's good parenting. I just think the whole thing is absurd. It's
absurd. I think there's another point as well. If you look at the nutrient content of various foods, you will find that rice, pasta, and quinoa is more expensive than meat per protein content or other nutrient content. So it's simply bullshit that meat is expensive.
Yeah.
Then we've got examples like this. Here I'm holding up a massive chicken. This is a 2 kilo chicken that so that's a big girl. That's a size 20. and my chicken's $23 a kilo. So that's a $48 chook. I don't know, in US dollars, that might be let's say a $35 chicken. Like that's a big, that's a lot of money for a raw chook. You know, to give you an idea, this is $48. You can go across the road from the supermarket here and buy a chicken that's stuffed, cooked, sitting in a bag, warm, ready to go for $10.
Yeah.
But it's half the size of this. It's a 1 kilo chicken. So really, this costs twice as that one, and it's not even cooked yet. But we've got 2 kilos worth of chicken. And interestingly, even though this is the one product in my shop that people get the biggest sticker shock off, it's actually the cheapest protein per kilo in the whole shop.
Yeah.
This will feed your family of 6 dinner. It'll give everyone leftovers for their sandwich for lunch the next day. And then you've got the carcass and the bones left behind, and you make your chicken broth, and you've got a week's worth of broth to have your cup of broth before you go to work in the morning. You know, that's what we have for breakfast every morning. My wife and I, we have a cup of chicken stock. You know, and we've taught some of these local families, like, I know this scares you because it's an expensive chicken, but compared to the beef, the pork, the lamb, it's the cheapest meat in the shop, and you've got 2 meals, you've got 12 portions of meals out of this, and your chicken's not for, it's just, you need that food intelligence to actually, you know, some people can't do leftovers. Joel Salatin, you know, the best farmer in the world, he's my regen farming guru. He said leftovers are the hallmark of good eating, and I love that phrase. You know,
good one.
You know, if you have a nice big dinner and you can take it for lunch instead of buying Macca's when you're on the road, you're on the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like your point. I like your point about food intelligence. I think a little bit of food intelligence and some simple math. You know, people just need to do a little bit of calculating, and they will find that being a carnivore or at least eating a very high proportion of meat is in fact not expensive.
One more comment, because I didn't get to crap on everything out there that's bad value. I'd like to. Cocktails in our area, you go to a restaurant and you order a cocktail. They're between $20 and $26 each.
Yeah.
People
Nobody
won't
says
think
anything about that.
You'll have 3 with your meal at a restaurant. You'll spend $75 having 3 drinks. Yeah. I don't know, don't even get me going. It's just beyond belief. I'm not saying don't drink if somebody wants it, but don't complain about the cost of living or the cost of meat. Every restaurant is making a killing on their alcohol menu.
Yeah, of course. That's the...
So, but I wonder then, like, you know, we talk about the big beef and the industrial meat producers, right? But I haven't seen them catch on to this carnivore craze, and nobody really sells protein and meat from the health advantages. It's just, they just sell it as a commodity. And like, when I was eating carnivore, I was like, how come there isn't a Super Bowl ad with, you know, ripped, beautiful people eating steak saying, fighting back against the government I call it the carbo pirate industry, and exposing their lies and saying, listen, if you want to get healthy, eat 500 pounds of meat next year and you'll be healthy. How come none of that exists, I wonder? Is it just because it's all, well, a lot of butchers and a lot of ranchers themselves aren't even carnivore. And I saw a picture one time of a couple of the top US beef executives and salesmen in a meeting, and these guys had never eaten steak. They're like 350 pounds.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, there's a lot of fat farmers out there too. I made a post on Facebook that you shouldn't buy meat off a fat farmer. No, sorry, that wasn't the comment I made. I said you shouldn't take health advice from a fat doctor.
Yeah,
and that became an absolute pound on that one. But yeah, look, I don't have an answer to that. I think a lot of these big corporate packers, you know, they've got such large monopolies that fighting for a little bit of market share on the consumer end just doesn't mean anything. They own all the meat coming in the country. They own all the abattoirs. It's all theirs anyway.
I see.
Know? And it's big business.
Monopoly.
They really are.
Or oligarchy, or whatever they call it, duopoly.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think, yeah, well, and if they're not in the mind of you know, if they don't even understand that the benefits are actually huge from a health perspective, if they don't understand it personally, I mean, the executives, having been one
Yeah.
myself, not in the meat industry, but if they don't understand it themselves, it simply doesn't exist, what they don't understand. So
Yeah, and for most people, it's a couple of years of eating meat before it was 2 years to get all the light bulbs turned on in my head of just eating beef every day.
Takes a while, yeah.
It took a while, yeah. It takes a while it takes a while to burn off decades of stored carbs on your own carcass.
Yeah, and kind of also, I think it's a learning process as well, because there's a reason why a bachelor's degree takes 3 years and a master's takes 5 years. It's not just the amount of things you need to learn, but there's also, I think there is a resting learning effect while resting and while time passes, and suddenly you start realizing things as time goes on. That, oh, this happened too, and you have enough time to repeat and understand what's actually happening. So I think a lot of people, if look at people like people with like billionaires, Bill Gates, Elon Musk. Why are they fat? This is completely ridiculous. Why are they fat and unhealthy? That just seems absurd to me. But it's because they do not understand what they could do. They haven't internalized it. So then
they don't understand the compounding effects of daily steak compounded for 1,000 days on an intermittently fasted metabolism is so absolutely transformative to a physical body. And I mean, I didn't really understand it on like a community-wide level. Like, what would a community look like if this eating style was distributed across the entire thing with everybody eating that way? Until I started looking into history of nomads and the top hunters, the most fierce tribes, 100% carnivore. And when you dig into how those tribes operated, it's like we can't even imagine. It sounds like crazy testosterone with high adventure happening all the time, more energy to travel and to tackle challenges than we could really even understand today.
Yeah,
you look at some of the hunters in Africa, and they'll actually run down an ant. Like, they'll just track it and they'll just run after it for like a day until it dies of exhaustion. Meanwhile, here in suburbia, in my town, if you can't get the car park that's directly out the front of the store, you just keep driving around the block until it comes free.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect.
Totally.
There is.
Baby steps. I'm just trying to sell some beef mince. That's all I'm trying to do. It's just baby steps.
Well, you're doing God's work, so it's going. So are you looking, how much do you think you're going to increase? How many more pounds of meat are you going to sell in 2024 compared to 2023?
We're looking at about a 60% increase is what we're predicting. So, our farms, our output in terms of revenues, compound doubled for 4 years, but we won't be able to maintain that this next 12 months. It'll be too much for everything, I think. So it'll be about a 60% increase, but I'll probably maintain that for a few years. I'm really on a bit of a journey at the moment. I'm at a crossroads because the farm's going well and it's growing and it's making some money and it's doing what it wants to do. But no one in this space in regenerative agriculture has fought for and claimed and held any reasonable ground. And I don't say that to disparage the movement, because I'm a true believer, and I don't say that to put the movement down. But there's a couple guys out there that are really having a go at the moment. In America, there's a farmer, Paul Greaves. He's got a company called Pasture Bird in California, and he's really building some infrastructure, investing in R&D, and scaling his business to a defensible level. And I think the only way we're going to do that is by getting capital. So the crossroads I'm at is, am I happy to tick along with the family business, grow it a bit every year and build it into a $10 million company, whatever it is, and have like a nice substantial farm business? or do we want to go soak up a couple $1 million worth of capital from some venture capitalists and turbocharge this thing and really try to proof the concept and make it meaningful and really try to, like you said, Lars, why aren't they advertising at the Super Bowl? It's because all the regen farmers, like most regenerative farmers doing what I do, they don't pay themselves. And they don't have any, they can't even afford staff. They got a town job as a dentist to offset the losses at the farm because it's all grassroots still. And I really think that the movement needs a few people to, like, I feel like there's a bit of a calling for it. I just don't want to sacrifice my peace to do it because it's, it's not easy. I've had family scale and float businesses and things in the past, and it's a big slog. So, and I really struggle with releasing autonomy. I don't like the idea of being accountable to investors and that sort of thing. But just throwing it out there as an interesting thought experiment. That's sort of one of the things that we're thinking about at the moment.
Good thinking.
Well, that's really interesting.
And sacrificing your peace is a big decision. And when you work, I'm come from the venture capital and private equity side, and you will be accountable. And then there will be people who don't really necessarily understand farming, who are going to ask, bother you with unnecessary stuff because they have their own stuff to do, etc. So you're going to be tied up in a structure. So I think, I'm not trying to give you advice on what you obviously know what you're doing and very successful. And
well, I've got some family and some associates that have expressed to me that they'd be interested in putting up, some lump sums each to try to. So I wouldn't need to go to some VC board and pitch. I could fundraise 7 figures with like-minded people, but it doesn't necessarily make it that much easier.
It might be a different kind of, it's a different kind of reporting structure, but
yeah.
Well, it's a manufacturing problem. I guess it's similar. Most people are somewhat familiar with Elon Musk's manufacturing problems over the last 5 years, because he had to go from legacy autos and they were built one way, and then he upended that whole thing and ended up, doing something that had been done millions of times every year on Earth, but now doing it in a new way. And I think something similar is going to have to happen with meat production on Earth, so that we can get regen meat at scale everywhere.
Yeah. I've got 100 ideas and the same 24 as everyone else. And to be honest, like, one of the things I get a bit of decision fatigue on is I don't know, like, we probably need to champion one of our enterprises. We do beef, pork, chicken, lamb, eggs. We probably need to have one of them as a hero product that we're better known for than the others, and it's a real leader, and we do that one exceptionally well. But I like all my enterprises so much that I find that hard to figure out. And if I do a profit and loss projection or a budget, I can make them all sing. I can make them all look fantastic. So, but yeah, I keep coming back to one of the coolest things to see happen to push some ground forward would be taking monoculture pine plantations and raising our pigs in them. There is no reason for a pig to be in a shed anywhere. Like in Australia, we've got millions of hectares, millions of acres of monoculture pine plantations, which is exactly where pigs are designed to live. They're forest-dwelling animals from Europe. This is literally where they want to be. Why are we investing millions of dollars building these centralized warehouses with concrete floors, manure lagoons, air conditioning systems, all this stuff to put our pigs in, when we've got these dormant, static, empty, perfect paddocks full of pine? So I've got this system in my head. Like, I just think it'd be easy. It'd be so easy to do. So, there's so many ideas knocking around, but I just think that that'll be a fantastic one to tackle.
Well, Jacob, who else does regen farming at your scale, across with all of the animals that you're doing it?
Oh, look, look, there's heaps around, and I'm certainly not the biggest. And if you want to have a look at what's happening, you know, in America, for instance, you've got Joel Salatin at Polyface Farms. He's in Virginia,
Yeah.
and he's referred to as the godfather of regenerative agriculture because I've mimicked a lot of what I do from what he does. He's been doing it for 50, 60 years. His father was doing a lot of this stuff. And they've taken a property that was 500 acres and basically rock because all the soil's been eroded over years of cropping, and they've built feet and feet of topsoil on it by the way they're managing their animals on it. They've just done an amazing job. Then you've got Will Harris of White Oak Pastures. He's probably bigger again. He's in America, in Georgia. He's got one of the only USDA inspected abattoirs on farm in the whole of America. And, you know, he has like 800 breeding cows and does, you know, tens of thousands of chickens and turkeys and guinea fowl and pigs and everything. You know, there's a bunch of guys, you know, there are a couple of the real big multi-species examples around the place, but then there's a bunch that are doing just fine, I think, as family businesses with a little boning room, selling meat to their community, and that's fine. I'm an advocate for more small farms to decentralize it, to get it into communities. Like I think that's great. But if we're going to feed Sydney and LA and Seattle and Hong Kong, you know, we need a couple big farms that are sophisticated, because the reality is, with that level of scale, doesn't mean we're going to have to resort on chemical use and all this stuff, but with scale comes resources and efficiencies. You know, the ability to get people to come in and give you consulting, or to hire experts to help you, or to outsource things. You know, and then we can bring the price back of the produce and ramp up the production of it. So, you know, there's huge market opportunity for some people to give it a proper nudge.
100%.
I'm trying to talk myself into it.
Well, you know, I feel that strongly that we need community activism that said, like, I say it till I'm blue in the face, like, we need to increase the amount of protein that we are feeding our children, teenagers, so on and so forth. But man, like, when you go through the grocery stores today, even compared to a decade ago, it's gotten exponentially, not only the packaging and the types of food that they're in, but I also pay attention, like Klaus does, to the quantity and to what they're selling, and they're shrinking. They're just making it more and more and more poison. And at some point, we need to really hit them back. And you know, I think at some point there's going to be a turnover, because this can't keep going on forever.
I had a funny experience just this week. I went to my supermarket and they had some random chalk roast there. It was 18 euros a kilo. And just around the corner from that, you could buy, there was like a large selection of sandwiches and other ready-made food. So I just, for the hell of it, I looked at what I wonder how much a ham sandwich costs. Anyway, the ham sandwich was 23 euros per kilo. So don't come and tell me that meat is expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is what people here, people primarily buy either semi-ready or completely ready meals just to chuck in the microwave, or to eat like cold.
Well, look at the Uber Eats. I had a cousin that told he cancelled his Uber Eats account because they sent him an end of year balance email or something, and he got to see how much he spent on it in the year. And not only did he spend something like $8,000 on food, but he realized that the delivery charges and everything was like almost $2,000 of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talk about that beef isn't carbon good. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Wow. Well, that's a great conversation, fellas.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Very inspiring,
Great stuff.
Jacob. You are going to have a fantastically successful life and business as well. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's a grand, big adventure you're doing, and I love seeing what you're up to, and just keep doing it as you will,
Phenomenal.
and just keep innovating the game, because we need guys like you to feed protein to all the kids that are coming along that you're making.
But yeah, feed the tribe, keep them coming.
Yeah, for me, it's going to be
All right,
grandkids
gentlemen.
maybe sometime here. Not quite
Good.
yet, but hopefully soon.
Hopefully. Well, that was a slice. Nice to talk with you, gentlemen, and we'll see you back on X.
All right, guys.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Jen. Good luck.